Well, hello and welcome everyone to a very special video today. After my first Jak and Daxter build a while ago, I have been requested, just like many other creators, to make something for JakMonth. JakMonth is to celebrate the 20-year anniversary of Jak and Daxter. I do have to admit, I am a Ratchet Clank guy myself, but I do have my fair share of love for the Jak and Daxter games too, especially when it comes to the speedrunning content and the community out there. I greatly appreciate the invite, and hereby is my addition to the content waterfall that you guys will have this month. But enough about that, let's get into the build. This is a 340 by 340 build with a little surprise at the end. It is approximately 220,000 blocks large, and if you do the math, it'll make sense later in the video. I loved building this and seeing the progress myself. The size of approximately 220,000 blocks is fighting for the number one spot of my biggest build so far, to date, ever, but this is by far the longest build I've done. When we get to day 6, however, there is a part of the recording missing. This might be because a part of the footage did get corrupted, and I think that little jump cut there is the footage that did get corrupted. It's not too much, but just a little heads up. Anyway, as you can obviously see, the footage is sped up. However, you might be wondering by how much. Well, I can tell you that this entire build took 67.5 hours to complete. With this video being just over 10 minutes long, this is a speed up of approximately 400 times. Just imagine looking at this build during the building process. Anyway, like I mentioned before, this is by far the longest to date. With a block count might fight for the number one spot, this smashed the duration record. So far, it has been 28, maybe 30 hours for the largest builds I've made so far. This 67.5 hours smashed it by more than double. Nevertheless, it does not take away from the fun I've had during the making of this though. It was amazing. Completing big chunks at once feels really great when building stuff like this. I loved building Daxter for this reason, since he's mainly two colors, the red and orange. Most of it went pretty quick. I think the order of speed is shading on the outside, then it's Daxter, and then it's Jak. Like I mentioned before, doing big chunks at once feels really good since you cover so much ground so quickly, and you can also just visually see the difference in speed when I switch back from Daxter and the shading to Jak. The best moments to watch, in my opinion, are days like day 14. Where I got back to Daxter and just get a ton of area done in no time, comparatively speaking. And any of the times I work on the outside shading, this is just so satisfying to watch, just seeing so much of the area getting covered so quickly. Apart from that, there's just a ton of detailing that is going on in Jak's entire stature, the face, the hair, pretty much everything related to Jak, really. You can already see, as we get into day 11 of the building streak, that a big chunk is already completed. You can start to make out what's going to be what, the shapes make more sense now, and if you're a Jak and Daxter fan, of course, you might already have guessed the reference image 10 days ago at this point, but we're far from there yet. It is day 13 at this point, out of the total 28 if I'm correct. There's a lot of days that went by, and I didn't build every day. Sometimes had a few days in between building sessions, and of course some are longer than others. But I just really did enjoy every minute of it. However, at the end, when I saw the final stretch in front of me, I just had to squeeze by a few more hours after already building for 60 plus hours at that point. Yeah, you can feel the agony. That agony, however, is all gone once you take a look at how far you've come at that point, and how good the build is looking so far. I haven't done too many of these generated images before, I think only 2 or 3 in the past, so it is really satisfying to see that it is turning out so well. And now you might be thinking, you said there was going to be something at the end. Come on, give it to me. Something does not add up. Please, please, spoil the beans. Well, now, about that surprise of the total block count of approximately 220,000 blocks making sense later in the video, well, it is now later in the video. After a whopping 16 days of building and 6 minutes of this video, you might wonder, great, it's almost finished. Wow, that is looking great so far. At least that's what I hope you're thinking. Only then to realize that there is a little more than 3.5 minutes of this video left. Keeping an eye on the left side of the build, you see something pop up. Could it be? Yes, it could. It is a second layer of blocks. That's right, 99% of this build is pretty much covered in 2 layers. The second layer is stained glass, which gives it a much better look overall. It is an amazing coloring technique that not a lot of people use. Me neither, apart from a single time, where it might actually add something to the build in a lower quality version than this. It is just magical how it turns this build from what it was into what it will be by just including that extra bit of shading effect that the stained glass gives. Just watch as the days pass by and I slowly work my way up this build again. It is so amazing to look at. Just the difference another layer of block makes to the outcome of a build like this. This is the true power of generated images. I usually make all my builds by picking the blocks myself, hence they are usually less detailed. However, for this instance, I made an exception, and rightfully so, and I'm so happy I did. Having that said, I think the most used block in this build is... well, take a guess. If you guessed black stained glass, correct. Yes, it is not redstone blocks or orange concrete or anything that you see in Daxter or the shading around the build itself. No, not even close. The most used block is black stained glass, and by a landslide too, if I remember correctly. Black stained glass is covering so much of this build, it's ridiculous. And no, it didn't make it any easier. There are blocks in between that don't get covered, or it's a mix between black, grey and brown, which is sometimes relatively difficult to differentiate on the program that I used. Yeah, it was tough at moments, but in the end it is looking magnificent. I hope you agree, and that all of you think that this build is worth the effort that has been put into it. I definitely do, and that's what matters to me, of course. However, I also made this build for you guys, and the month-long party that we will all have together. And I think we're also at the end of the build now too. So, I hope you enjoyed the entire story of this build, and obviously the build itself, and everything else about it. I wish you all a great JakMonth, and of course enjoy all of the content of the other creators. And I will see you in the next video. Until then, my dudes. Until then.